It was meant to be a display of power. What emerged was far more chilling. 3 of the world's infamous dictators in one place. Behind closed doors, no one knew what they discussed. Then, a hot mic caught something no one was meant to hear: the quest for immortality. And it's found in operating theaters. But how many lives would it take for one ruler to survive? On today's episode of the Infographic Show, we reveal how Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin plan to live forever. The world may not be in a global war right now, but some clear lines are developing. On one side is most of Europe, bound together by the European Union and NATO, and backed by a strong, though increasingly strained alliance with the United States. They typically work with other regional powers like Canada, India, Israel, Japan, and South Korea. And on the other side are the military powerhouses of Russia, China, and North Korea. All 3 are pushing back against American influence with aggressive military actions, including playing a key role in Russia's war in Ukraine. And in September 2025, for a rare event, the anti-Western leaders were all in one place. It was the 2025 China Victory Day Parade, held on September 3rd. It was ostensibly a celebration of Japan's defeat in the Second World War, as well as the Second Sino-Japanese War. China knows how to put on a show, and over 12,000 troops participated in the massive display. Xi Jinping oversaw it personally, inspecting the troops, and made a point of inviting the world leaders he saw as allies. Most of the invited leaders came from border nations, countries that had fought alongside China during the war, and iconoclastic regimes opposed to the United States. Vladimir Putin might be the most despised world leader at the moment, currently enmeshed in a 3-year-long war with its border nation of Ukraine. It's carried out a brutal occupation and extended barrages of missile strikes against civilian targets in the country. Though heavily embargoed by much of the world, Russia has kept its war effort alive thanks to China, which has supplied weapons and equipment to its struggling military. And while Putin frequently makes bold threats, most analysts believe that he relies on this link to China to keep things afloat. But it's not nearly as rare to see him as this next figure. North Korea is called the Hermit Kingdom, and it's not easy to get in or out. The reclusive, nuclear-armed communist nation has been ruled by one family since its bitter, bloody divorce from South Korea. North Korea's current leader, Kim Jong Un, is not only one of the world's youngest rulers, but also among its most unpredictable. The country's foreign policy is generally whatever hurts the United States, and it's actually gone further than China in its support for Russia, sending North Korean troops to fight in Ukraine in what's become a meat grinder. And when all 3 of them gather in one place, few people expect anything good. This was a big PR opportunity for all 3 men, as they wanted to convey strength and a unified opposition to the Western world order. So there would be plenty of photo ops for the friendly media to share with the world, with everyone understanding that you don't cross these 3 and you don't make them look bad. The trio were walking through the historic Tiananmen Square, an infamous place that looked far less chaotic than it did in most people's memories, as they shared what was no doubt expected to be a private conversation. But it didn't work out that way. A microphone was on, and the words exchanged between Putin and Xi were overheard. And in today's world, things travel around the world in an instant. A Mandarin interpreter was able to transmit it to much of China, and a Russian interpreter did the same for Putin's home country. The BBC was then able to translate it to English, and soon everyone in the world knew what the dictators were discussing, and it sounded like something out of science fiction. They weren't discussing military action or diplomatic sabotage, they were discussing immortality. At first it seemed like a casual conversation between 2 friends who happened to be dictators. Both Putin and Xi are in their 70s, and the 2 men were talking about how it used to be rare to be this old, and they're still in their prime. Both men are known to be healthy and energetic, or at least that's the image they project to the world. Some men their age play pickleball, they play the great game of war. And both of them have been ruling for far longer than they were expected to, and they don't look like they're giving up power anytime soon, no matter what Mother Nature has to say. Putin's next comment wasn't heard, but his interpreter could then be heard to say that with the development of biotechnology, human organs can be transplanted much more easily, again and again and again. People can live younger and younger and even achieve immortality. Xi appeared intrigued, noting that some experts believed people could live to 150 within this century, well beyond the lifespans of even the most carefully documented supercentenarians. And once the cat was out of the bag, they weren't hiding it anymore. Putin would later repeat his comments to the Russian media and emphasize the advances in organ transplant technology. He said that it made it possible to live an active life for longer, and said that all life expectancy will rise as a result. It wasn't nearly as shocking as the initial translation, but it still created an eerie impression. Are these two enemies of the United States planning to enhance their lifespans so they can bedevil presidents for decades to come? And how does Kim Jong Un fit into this? If they know, they're not telling. Soon after, the parade shifted back to celebrations and ostentatious displays of Chinese artillery, and the conversation faded from people's minds. But not for long. The bizarre exchange underscored how closely the two dictators were aligned and how intent they were on building a unified New World Order directly opposed to U.S. interests. While many of the speeches at the parade emphasized peace, the big displays of nuclear weapons made people think otherwise. And the list of dignitaries drove home that Xi and Putin were making progress with their outreach to other countries. Representatives from Brazil, Turkey, and Indonesia emphasized the inroads they were making. But history showed that when these two men talked about their ambitions, they probably weren't joking. Xi Jinping rose through the ranks of the Chinese Communist Party, the son of a veteran who had been exiled to the countryside during Mao's infamous purges. He survived the Cultural Revolution, eventually became the local party secretary, and became governor of Fujian. By 2008, he was in position to be Hu Jintao's successor. While he has moderated Chinese domestic and economic policies in some ways, he's known for his aggressive foreign policy. He's seen as an effective leader in China, and that has led him to seek extension after extension to his leadership. He was elected to an unprecedented third term as state president in 2023 and has essentially been given the right to stay in his position indefinitely. The Chinese system allowed for Xi to gain his power, but Putin had to take it. Putin has seen a lot of Russian history. Rising to prominence in the Soviet Union, he worked as a KGB agent for 16 years until the fall of the Soviet Union, before beginning his own political career. That meant joining the ranks of Russia's first democratically elected president, Boris Yeltsin, who was seen as a breath of fresh air compared to militaristic Soviet leaders. But Yeltsin also proved himself to be unprepared for the chaos that was to come. That allowed Putin to gain power and loyalty from him, and when Yeltsin resigned due to his failing health, Putin was his designated successor. He hasn't given up power since, being elected multiple times. He did step aside for one term to let his second-in-command, Dmitry Medvedev, take his place due to term limits. But those are gone now, and Putin is essentially Russia's president for life. And both have ambitions that might take them far longer than this lifetime. With their advanced age and rumors circulating about Putin's health, both men have been taking aggressive moves in recent years to expand or reclaim territory. Xi Jinping's been laying claim to much of the South China Sea, building artificial islands that allow a Chinese military presence in international or even foreign waters. And then, of course, there's his long-standing vow to reclaim Taiwan, split from China in a civil war, now a U.S. ally with a very different system of government. But that might be nothing compared to Putin's plans. While China lost Taiwan during a war, it's nothing compared to what Russia lost. The country expanded massively when it was the Soviet Union, taking over much of Eastern Europe and Central Asia. As the Soviet Empire fell, a whopping 15 countries gained independence. Many of them are still close to Russia, but others like Ukraine and the Baltic states are moving closer and closer to the West. Putin has been increasingly belligerent toward them in recent years, making it clear that Ukraine is not where his mission ends. But reclaiming all of those countries will be an extended process, even if he doesn't face direct Western occupation. The Russian military is worn down and will need some time to restock after the conflict with Ukraine. Extra time might definitely be appealing to both these men. But what about the third man in the room? Kim Jong Un is the youngest of the three leaders, being in his 40s. The son and grandson of two previous leaders of the Kim dynasty, he rose to power as the next in line. He's known as a ruthless dictator who enforces Juche, a philosophy that demands self-sufficiency and devotion to the state. The North Korean government is one of the most reclusive in the world, and some of his father's mild liberalizations have been rolled back. The Kim family is given near godlike status in North Korea, so elections aren't a concern. He'll be ruling for the rest of his life. But the problem is that may not be as long as he'd like. While he is the youngest of the three, he's had the closest calls with death so far. He's been hospitalized several times due to reported health issues, and his father died suddenly of a heart attack in his late 60s. Information about his health is tightly guarded, as are the details of North Korea's medical system. But his previous health crises have raised alarms, especially as he doesn't seem to have a clear designated successor. Reportedly, his sister Kim Yo-jong was considered a potential replacement for him, but now he's reportedly grooming his teenage daughter to take his place when the time comes. This would be a big change for the Hermit Kingdom and potentially kick off a succession crisis. So it's no surprise everyone in that parade was interested in immortality. But are we getting close to making it a reality? For one thing, the topic that the dictators were talking about is very much a reality. Organ transplants may have sounded like science fiction a century ago, but thanks to sterile surgical procedures and anti-rejection drugs, doctors have been able to extend people's lifespans by years or even decades with transplants of kidneys, hearts, lungs, and more. Most organs come from people who died in a way that didn't destroy their organs, often a car accident or sudden head injury, and they were signed up to be an organ donor. However, in some cases, like kidney donations and partial liver donations, a living donor can provide an organ in a surgery that usually goes off without a hitch. And in most cases, this procedure is scrupulously ethical. In the United States, organ donations must be done with the prior consent of the deceased or the agreement of the family if there was no previous yes or no. It's also strictly illegal to provide any incentive for an organ donation. People have gone to prison for buying and selling kidney donations, and some transplants have been called off by hospitals at the first sign of a quid pro quo. While some argue these laws need to be slightly loosened to save lives, medical ethics experts say it's the best way to ensure no one gets exploited. But in other countries, it's a very different story. Part of the reason that this conversation sent chills down people's spines was because of China's organ transplant system. The massive country has one of the largest organ transplant programs in the world, with over 13,000 liver and kidney transplants in one year, 2004. But there was a dark secret behind it. China also had the most active death penalty system in the world. While direct information on the number of executions per year is classified, it's believed to dwarf any other country due to China's harsh justice system and large population. And for a long time, it was a reliable supply of organs. It wasn't until 2007 that China admitted that executed prisoners were being used for organs, and they eventually began making some reforms. In 2006, commercial trading of organs was banned, and the practice was eventually outlawed as a whole after 2015. But by then, many horrific stories had emerged, including a massive scandal involving the supposed killing and organ harvesting of Falun Gong political prisoners. The international scrutiny over this led to reforms of the program in the 2010s. But now, history may be repeating itself. Over the last decade, China has intensified its persecution of the Uyghur Muslim minority in Xinjiang. Millions have been interned as part of the efforts to suppress their cultural practices, force assimilation into Chinese society, and eliminate any ambitions they have for independence. While the information China has released on these internment camps has been limited, those who have researched them say there are likely rampant human rights abuses taking place. And behind the fences, horrors may also be taking place. Ethan Gutman, a member of the U.S. think tank Victims of Communism Memorial Foundation, has alleged that mass organ harvesting is going on there. This was backed up by the China Tribunal, a London-based investigation into the possible human rights abuses. While the validity of Gutman's information has been debated, he claims that as many as 65,000 people in Xinjiang may have had their organs harvested after death each year, with one woman saying that the organs are often sold to wealthy Saudi customers in need of transplants. And if the boss man needs one, he'll be at the front of the line. Less information is known about organ harvesting in Russia and North Korea, but both countries are known to have a large number of political prisoners and a history of human rights abuses. It's likely that if any of those leaders need an organ transplant, they'd have absolutely no problem getting it. The problem is that it isn't the cure-all for one's ills that the conversation made it sound like. Organ transplants take more out of the recipient than the donor in most cases. It involves a lifetime on anti-rejection drugs to keep the organ functioning. And while this medical miracle does extend life significantly, it usually comes with lingering health issues and the risk of needing another transplant down the line. But humans have never been one to take no for an answer. Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin are plotting to figure out the key to immortality, but so are a lot of other people. For decades, people have been studying the lives of the supercentenarians, those who live for 110 years or more. This is a tiny group, with the longest-lived person of all time being Zhen Kalmen, who lived to 122. Individual cases don't always tell the full story. Many supercentenarians drink regularly, eat whatever they like, and many have just won the genetic lottery. That's why scientists focus instead on the blue zones. There are places with an unusual number of people who live beyond 100. They include provinces in Japan, Italy, Costa Rica, and Greece. And they do have a lot of things in common. They include regions that lend themselves to regular exercise, low stress, good food, and a strong social scene, and low disease. But a long life doesn't necessarily provide what people are looking for. When you live to a ripe old age, you're still old. While many of these supercentenarians remain in surprisingly good health until 110, their lives are still very limited by age. Most of them live in assisted living, many use wheelchairs or have reduced vision or hearing. Some are even holding out for extended periods despite having drastically reduced cognitive function. An extended lifespan doesn't mean extended youth, and according to many people, what use is living forever if you can't be young forever? And some are ready to go to extreme measures to answer that. The desire for the old to live forever has been fodder for fiction for well over a century. After all, isn't it at the heart of most vampire fiction? But in the last few decades, there have been rumors of people taking it way too literally. Rich old people taking blood from the young to rejuvenate themselves. This isn't some sort of blood-drinking attack. It's usually donations of healthy plasma to flush out the system and provide more energy. There's no proof of any health benefits, and given the negative media reaction, it's unlikely anyone will discuss it openly. Well, except for one guy who is taking it further than anyone expected. Brian Johnson, a venture capitalist and entrepreneur, is known for his science investments, as well as for founding Kernel, a company that works on recording brain activity. Johnson has a unique reason for this focus. He believes he can live forever if he masters the technology in time. He follows a strict diet and lifestyle regimen to keep himself in ideal health. He even underwent a series of plasma transfusions, including one from his own son. However, these donations didn't provide the benefits he was looking for. He takes it so far, people wonder, is this guy even living? Johnson has essentially outsourced his entire life to anti-aging techniques, referring to anything that accelerates aging as an act of violence against yourself. He's not the only person who's obsessed with beating death. Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and Peter Thiel invested in biotech firms working on anti-aging. But at its core, experts say this entire movement comes down to one thing. The rich and powerful can beat just about everything except death. If there is a hack to defeat mortality itself, that would be the final frontier that would take away the last uncertainty of life, which means we might be in the middle of the last arms race. Across the world, people are involved in one technique after another to try to extend life or beat death entirely. Some of the most outlandish involve creating neural maps of brain activity, which would essentially allow people to digitize their personality. Human cloning is also being researched, although not done in practice due to strict laws against it in almost every country. One of the fastest growing areas of research is genetic editing, which is primarily focused on pre-birth editing right now. This could allow people to have designer children free of health issues, and it could also open the door to people editing themselves even after they're born. Many people dream of a world without death, but is that something to aspire to? Fears of overpopulation make many people hesitant to embrace the technology even in its early stages. After all, if the old generation is going nowhere, is there even a reason for a new generation? But right now, most of this is purely theoretical. Most of the anti-aging efforts have shown little effect, with most people obsessed with youth opting for more visually driven options. Plastic surgery is getting better all the time, and cancer research has improved to the point where it can usually be detected early, and life expectancy with treatment has massively increased. But for the most powerful men in the world, that may not be enough. The aging of world leaders has been a hot topic lately, and when you have near unlimited resources, anything is possible. Putin is reportedly directing significant Russian money toward anti-aging research, and the first person who cracks the code will likely become the richest person in the world. After all, death is the great equalizer. No matter who you are or how powerful you've become, you have to meet the Reaper eventually. And so it's likely that the hot mic conversation between Putin and Xi wasn't exactly some shocking secret plan to harvest organs, or a reveal of a new technique for extended life. It was probably just two old men with a lot of power wondering how they can keep it for longer. And the entire world just happened to be listening in. Xi and Putin might dream of living forever, but immortality wouldn't save them from the ultimate end. Watch why it would suck to live through the end of the universe to see what forever really looks like, or click on this video instead.